holds me. Holds me. You know, Reverend Alex, you don't need to write that down. You're not going to use that at 1:30. And then there's another image of God in the New Testament. We'll move on very quickly. There's another image in the New Testament that talks about God is like an eagle who helps her young to fly. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm up at the observatory up here in Griffith Park to look down and see that eagle that is swooping over the hills, I love that image of God, that God who is looking out for me and seeing where my path is going and beckoning me forward. Now, that doesn't mean that I like that image of God that swoops down and grabs the little something off the ground and eats it up. But I love that image of God who is swooping out and is seeing out for me. Sometimes I can't see one foot in front of the other, but I believe in a creator who's seeing way, way in front of me and who is egging me on, moving me forward, keeping me energized to go forward. Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You know, I want to tell you, sometimes I get a little bit stuck on this part of the prayer. Because I don't know about you, but I believe in a God who is present here on earth. I believe in a God that Jesus teaches us over and over about, a Jesus who is in you and me. A God who calls us to be co-creators with God. A God who is not over us or just looking down on us, but a God who is with us. Isn't that what we say at Christmas? God Emmanuel, God with us. And yet there is a sense of reality that there is also the presence of God who is way up in heaven, who is really in control. Now, I know I've said a few times in recent times that I don't believe in predestination. I don't believe in a God who just has everything so mapped out for us that we needn't bother. I truly believe in a God who calls us into co-creative responsibility with God, a God who inspires us to be involved in the world and to be involved in our own lives. But there is also something a little bit comforting about a God who is already preparing a place for me in heaven. There is something very comforting about a God who sees the bigger picture long before I even get involved in it. Because if I can believe in that kind of a God who art in heaven, a God who is so in control, a God who is so able to see the bigger picture, then what I'm called to do is to see where I fit in that picture of God's plan and God's desire. Now, there's something about that actually calls us into a place of responsibility, because it calls us into a place of being not only self-aware of who we are, but it calls us into a place of self-awareness of where we need to be going. Not that we have to get there or think about how we're going to get there tomorrow. We only have to stay within the day. But there is something comforting about a God who sees this bigger picture and sees me and you as being involved in that bigger picture. I don't know about you, but it gives my life purpose. It gives my life some passion. It gives my life somewhere to be heading. And whilst it's great to stay in the day, and I'm glad that we get the chance to stay in the day, I'm glad that there is a power bigger than I, a power that is much higher than I, much deeper than I, much wider than I, thankfully, everything about that God who still has the bigger picture about where you and I fit in and how we are called into that co-creating responsible place about how we can make this happen here on earth as it is in heaven. Our Creator who art in heaven, seeing the bigger picture, seeing how all this is mapped out, seeing how we can be participants with God in creating a difference in the world. Now, in the 12-step tradition, the higher power could be anything. And I've met lots of folks and I've talked to them about, what is your higher power? And I will say, this is not to degradate anybody, and I promise you that's not my intent, but I did have someone who said to me that their higher power was a can of Coke, a can of Diet Coke. They wanted Diet Coke, not the real stuff. And I did say to them, I said, I understand that we're all able to see our higher power in so many different ways, but why do you see your higher power in this can of Coke? And they said to me, because if I can just take this can of Coke, it stops me taking the next drink. And that their higher power was just seeing this can of Coke as their way of getting through the day, one day at a time, Jesus. I don't know about you, but sometimes I want to see God as my can of Coke. I want to see God as that one that I can just focus on, because it stops me doing some of the stupid things that you and I'll just speak for myself, that I do so often in my life that just help me to stop me from remembering that God is my higher power. And that God is the one that I need to look at. God is the one that I need to absorb into my life and into my body. God is the one who has my best interests at heart. God is the one who is in heaven. Our Creator who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Sometimes when I want to do some stupid things in my life, I just need to look at God and say, hallowed be your name, and I want you to be present in my life right now, because it stops me doing some of the stupid things, making some of the silly decisions that I get to make and so often we get to make in our own daily experience. Now, am I relating to anyone this morning? Anyone have understand where I'm coming from this morning? To remember, yes, there is a God who is inside us. There is the presence of the Christ. And we say at the sharing of the peace, there's a Christ in you that greets the Christ in me. But sometimes we need to be aware that Christ is not just our human power. That Christ is our higher power. Our Christ is the one who has our best interests, who can see the long run. That God is the one who is in heaven, that is just able to see absolutely everything that's available to us. And to allow that to be made real in our lives so that we can be one with God. And so that where God sees us going, we can follow. Where God's footprint is being put one in front of the other, we get to follow. We get to place our feet in those footsteps. Our God, our Creator who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. How many of us use God's name in vain, forgetting that we should hallow the name of God? You know, I'm going to tell you, sometimes I think that we use the name of God in most inappropriate ways. And we use that name of God to cast curses rather than to cast blessings. You know, and I think all of us have done that at one stage in our life. You know, I said a couple of weeks ago in my sermon where I was talking about the power of the pastor. And I said that, you know, there are folks who truly believe that if I cast someone to hell, that's where they're going. I was like, how on earth could anyone really believe that I would have the power to cast anyone to hell? Not that I ever would. Well, unless you really annoy me, but you know. But the reality is that we believe in a God who is present with us. A God who is in heaven, a God that only wants to bless us. Now, that doesn't mean that our lives are going to be rosy green for the rest of eternity. You know, we all still go through the struggles of life, the ups and the downs. That's what Tony sung about this morning. About no matter where you are, God is with you in the mix, that there is a God who is constant for us. But what we believe as people of faith is that God has not abandoned us, that God still is with us, even in the mess of our lives.